This is not just a story, this is the reality of thousands of mothers who give up their entire lives for their children, but in the end, they are left alone. Watch till the end, it will break your heart. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories. The sun was setting over Lahore, casting golden rays through the curtains of a modest home. Inside, the air was alive with laughter. Sarah, a young woman barely in her 20s, moved between the kitchen and the living room, balancing plates of food while humming a soft tune. Her beauty was simple yet radiant, not the beauty of makeup, but the glow of love and contentment. On the rug in the middle of the room, her two little sons, Ayan, 6, and Rayyan, 4, were building a tower with wooden blocks. Their giggles filled every corner of the house. The door opened, and Ahmed walked in, his shoulders heavy with the day's work, but his smile wide the moment he saw them. He dropped his bag and spread his arms. Who will come to Baba first? Rayyan screamed with joy and ran into his father's embrace, while Ayan tugged at his shirt. Ahmed scooped them both up, spinning them around until the house rang with squeals. Sarah stood in the doorway, her eyes shining as she watched her little family. She teased, "Bas, enough heroics. Go wash your hands before you touch the food. The table is waiting." They sat together at the dinner table, plates clinking, voices overlapping. Ahmed asked the boys about school, listened to their endless stories, and slipped secret glances at Sarah, who smiled quietly, her heart full. After dinner, while the boys played, Ahmed leaned closer to his wife. "Sarah, I know we don't have much. But one day, I'll give you everything you deserve, a bigger house, better things, a life of comfort." Sarah shook her head softly. "I don't need the world, Ahmed. This home, these boys, and you, that's all I want." They didn't know those words would become her lifelong truth. Later that night, Sarah tucked Ayan and Rayyan into bed. "Ami, will you tell us a story?" Ayan asked. She smiled, sitting beside them. "Once upon a time, there was a brave father who worked very hard, and a loving mother who prayed for him every night. And they had two princes, who were their whole kingdom." The boys drifted to sleep with smiles on their faces. Sarah kissed their foreheads, unaware that the story she had just told would soon be rewritten by fate itself. The next morning was ordinary, or at least it began that way. Ahmed wore his usual clothes, sipped his tea, and bent down to kiss Sarah's forehead before leaving for work. "Take care of the boys," he said, his voice calm but filled with love. Sarah stood at the doorway as he walked away, never knowing it would be the last time she saw him alive. Hours later, the phone rang. Sarah answered casually, expecting Ahmed's voice. Instead, a stranger spoke, heavy with dread. "Madam, there's been an accident. Your husband didn't make it." The cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Sarah's knees gave way, her breath caught in her chest. The world blurred around her as the phone fell from her fingers. Her sons came running at the sound of glass breaking. "Ami? What happened?" Ayan asked, his eyes wide. Sarah could not answer. She collapsed to the floor, clutching her dupatta, the walls of her little home closing in on her. The camera opens on a graveyard drenched in a pale, gray morning. A wooden coffin lies above a freshly dug grave. Raindrops fall gently, mixing with the tears of those gathered. Sarah stands motionless, her white dupatta damp against her hair, her face pale. Beside her, Ayan clutches her hand tightly, confused and scared, while little Rayyan hides his face in her dress, crying uncontrollably. The imam's voice trembles through the silence, "Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un." As the coffin is lowered, Sarah's body shakes. She presses her children closer, whispering, "Look. Your Baba is going to Allah. Pray for him, my loves," but her own voice breaks, her words drowning in her sobs. Back at home, the rooms feel like strangers. The chair where Ahmed used to sit lies empty. His shoes are still by the door. His watch rests on the table. The air still carries his scent, but he will never return. Relatives surround Sarah, speaking in hushed tones. She is so young, how will she raise 2 boys alone, one whispers. Maybe she should think about remarriage, this burden is too heavy, another replies. Sarah hears them, every word stabbing her heart. She doesn't respond, she only lowers her gaze, her hands clutching the ends of her dupatta as if it could hold her broken world together. That night, when everyone leaves, silence settles like a cruel guest. Sarah tucks Ayan and Rayyan into bed. Ami. Baba will come tomorrow, right? Ayan asks softly. Sarah's throat tightens. She strokes his hair and kisses his forehead. No, Beta. Baba has gone to Allah. He won't come back. But he's watching you from Jannah. Ayan blinks back tears, while Rayyan clings to his pillow, sobbing until sleep claims him. When the boys are finally asleep, Sarah sits alone in the living room. The lamp flickers, casting shadows on the walls. She stares at Ahmed's photograph, her fingers tracing his face. Ahmed, how will I do this? How will I be mother and father at the same time? She whispers, her voice breaking. The night stretches endlessly. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind feels like Ahmed's absence mocking her. She curls on the floor, clutching his photo, tears soaking the carpet. Morning comes. The world moves on, but Sarah's has stopped. Bills lie unpaid on the counter. School fees wait on the table. The kitchen shelves are nearly empty. Sarah wipes her tears, straightens her dupatta, and whispers to herself. No matter what, I will not let my sons feel the absence of their father. I will fight. For them. The camera zooms in on her weary yet determined face, a young widow, alone in the world, but already carrying the strength of a warrior in her heart. The morning sun peeks through the curtains, but Sarah is already awake. Dark circles stain her eyes, yet she moves quickly, tying Ayan's tie and packing Rayyan's school bag. She forces a smile. Ami, will I get the same shoes as Ali? Ayan asks shyly, pointing to his worn-out pair. Sarah kneels, cupping his face. Inshallah, Beta. Ami will get you better ones soon. But inside, her heart aches. She has no money. After dropping the boys at school, Sarah meets the principal of a small private academy. Madam, I need a teacher, the principal says. But the pay is very little. Sarah nods eagerly. Please, I will take it. I just need work. Her days now begin in the classroom, teaching children multiplication tables, correcting their copies, all while her mind drifts to her own boys. When the sun sets, Sarah doesn't rest. In the dim glow of a single bulb, she stitches clothes for neighbors. The sewing machine whirs into the night, its sound mixing with the cries she hides in her chest. Her fingers blister, her back bends, but she pushes on. Sometimes, when exhaustion overpowers her, she looks at Ahmed's photograph hanging on the wall. Ahmed, I promised you. I will raise them well. Even if it costs me everything. One evening, Ayan runs home with a bright flyer. Ami. There's a school trip to Islamabad. Please, can I go? Everyone's going. Sarah holds the paper. The cost is more than she earns in a week. Her smile fades for a second, but only for a second. She ruffles Ayan's hair. Of course, Beta. You will go. That night, she works until her hands bleed. She even sells her gold bangles, Ahmed's last gift, just to gather enough. When Ayan holds the money, his eyes shine. Thank you, Ami. You're the best. He hugs her tight, never knowing the price she paid. Days pass. Rayyan asks for a cricket bat. Sarah skips her own meals to buy it. On their birthdays, she bakes a small cake, pretending it's enough, while her heart silently apologizes. I wish I could give you more. One night, after putting the boys to sleep, Sarah sits by the window. The city outside is noisy, but her world is quiet. She whispers into the night. My sons will never feel fatherless. I will be enough for them. Even if I have to bury my own life. The camera lingers on her weary but determined face. A mother, young, fragile, but made of steel. Years passed quietly, though for Sarah each day felt heavier than the last. The young widow who once dreamed of traveling with her husband, of wearing bright clothes and enjoying life, had buried her own desires in silence. Her hair, once thick and dark, now carried strands of silver. Her hands, once soft, were rough from endless work. Yet, her heart never stopped beating for her sons. Whenever she walked through the streets, she felt the eyes of people on her. Some looked at her with pity, others with judgment. She is still so young, they whispered, why doesn't she remarry? Why is she wasting her life? Sarah heard them, every cruel word, but she never replied. What could she say? That her life was no longer hers, that her happiness had died with Ahmed? One evening, as she returned home tired from a long day, she passed by a bridal shop. The mannequins glittered in red and gold, their eyes lifeless but dressed like queens. For a brief moment, Sarah's own reflection appeared in the glass. She stood frozen, remembering the day Ahmed had brought her as a bride, how he had promised her the world. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away. No, Sarah, she whispered to herself. Your dreams are your children's dreams now. Inside the house, Ayan and Rayyan were waiting eagerly. Ami. My friends are buying new storybooks. Can we get some too? Sarah smiled, though her pockets were nearly empty. That night, she skipped dinner and quietly set aside money. A week later, she placed the books in their hands. The boys' laughter filled the room, and Sarah's hunger didn't matter anymore. Her life became a cycle of sacrifices, small and big. When neighbors invited her to weddings, she wore the same old clothes again and again, her dupatta patched in places. When she fell sick, she hid her pain, refusing to buy medicines so she could save for her children's school. And when loneliness clawed at her heart in the silent nights, she buried her face in Ahmed's photograph and whispered, I am still keeping my promise. Sometimes, in the stillness of dawn, she allowed herself a moment of weakness. She would sit by the window, watching young girls her age walk by in colorful dresses, laughing with their husbands. And for a heartbeat, Sarah would wonder, what if? What if she had chosen herself? What if she had said yes to the proposals that came her way? But then she would hear Ayan and Rayyan stirring in their sleep, calling out for Ami, and her doubts would vanish. Their voices were enough to keep her alive. Years of sacrifice stole her youth, but it built the future of her children. The world may never know how many times Sarah killed her own wishes, how many nights she cried in silence, or how many mornings she forced a smile. But to her, it was never a loss. It was love, pure and unselfish. Time never stopped, even when Sarah wished it would. The boys she once carried in her arms were now young men. Ayan, tall and serious, carried the confidence of his late father. Rayyan, gentler but equally determined, had his mother's soft heart. Sarah's eyes often lingered on them when they studied late into the night, books spread across the table, lamps burning until dawn. She would quietly bring them tea and sit in the corner, watching. Every page they turned was proof that her sacrifices had not been in vain. The day came when Ayan received his appointment letter. Sarah held the envelope in trembling hands, unable to believe the words written on it. Officer, she whispered, her eyes blurring with tears. She pressed the letter to her chest and looked up at the ceiling, her lips trembling in prayer. Ahmed, do you see? Our son has done it. Not long after, Rayyan too brought home his letter. That evening, the small house that had once been filled with sorrow now overflowed with joy. Neighbors came to congratulate them, and Sarah's heart swelled with pride as she stood beside her sons, both in their crisp uniforms, saluting her with playful smiles. She could not stop her tears. She kissed their foreheads one by one. You have made me the richest mother in the world, she whispered. Her sacrifices, her hunger, her sleepless nights, everything had turned into this moment of glory. Soon, weddings were arranged. Sarah, though tired and aging, threw herself into preparations as if she were 20 again. She wanted her son's brides to enter homes glowing with love. She borrowed money, sold what little jewelry she had left, and worked tirelessly to ensure every detail was perfect. On the day of Ayan's wedding, Sarah stood silently in a corner, her hands folded. The bride entered, adorned in gold and red. Sarah's eyes filled as she remembered her own wedding day, when Ahmed had whispered promises into her ear. She smiled faintly, wiping her tears before anyone noticed. At Rayyan's wedding, she laughed more openly, dancing with the guests, hiding the pain in her knees and the weakness in her body. My sons are settled, she thought. Now, maybe, I can finally rest. That night, when the wedding lights dimmed and the noise faded away, Sarah sat alone in her room. For the first time in years, she felt relief. She whispered to herself, my journey is complete. Now, I can spend my last days in peace, surrounded by their love. But fate had written something far more cruel in her destiny. The house that once echoed with children's laughter had become strangely quiet. Sarah would wake up early, just as she always did, preparing breakfast and waiting at the table. But now, the chairs beside her remained empty. Her sons, busy with their offices and new families, often left in a hurry or didn't come home at all. At first, Sarah told herself it was normal. They are young, they are building their futures. I shouldn't expect too much. She smiled through the silence, keeping herself busy with little things, folding the same clothes again and again, watering the plants that Ahmed had once loved, or sitting by the window watching neighbors' children play. But the silence began to grow louder each day. One evening, she called Ayan. Beta, will you come for dinner tonight? I made your favorite biryani. There was a pause on the other side. Ami, I'm sorry. We're going out with some friends. Maybe another day. Her smile didn't fade, though her eyes did. Of course, Beta. Enjoy yourself. When she hung up, she sat alone at the table, staring at the untouched food. For the first time, she realized she wasn't hungry. Weeks passed, and Sarah's body began to fail her. A constant cough, weakness in her legs, and headaches that wouldn't leave. She ignored them at first, hiding the pain behind her dupatta. But one morning, while making tea, the cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Her vision blurred as she fell to her knees. The doctor's words were quiet but heavy. You need rest. You're not young anymore. Your body is very weak. Rest. The word felt almost like a joke. Rest had never been part of Sarah's life. But she nodded, hiding her fear. When she returned home, she told her sons about her illness. Ayan listened, frowning, but didn't say much. Rayyan's wife spoke before he could. Ami, it's better if you stay careful. We don't want the children catching anything. Sarah froze at her words. She looked at her son, hoping he would protest, but Rayyan lowered his gaze. Her heart cracked silently. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling. For years, she had given them everything, her health, her youth, her dreams. And now, all she wanted was a little care, a little time, a little love. Instead, she felt like a burden. Her hands trembled as she reached for Ahmed's photograph on the bedside table. Ahmed, is this what we raised them for? Did I fail as a mother, or is this just life's cruelty? Her tears slipped quietly into the pillow. For the first time in decades, Sarah felt truly alone. The days grew heavier for Sarah. Her cough worsened, her steps slowed, yet her heart still longed for her children's presence. She tried to ignore her weakness, but the house told the truth. Dust gathered on corners she once kept spotless, meals remained half-cooked, and her body no longer obeyed her spirit. One evening, Ayan and Rayyan sat together with their wives. Sarah, resting in her room, overheard their muffled voices through the half-closed door. She needs constant care, Ayan said, his tone heavy. Rayyan replied, "We can't manage with our work and kids. You know how hectic life already is." Then came the words that pierced Sarah's heart. Maybe an old age home would be better. There, at least, she'll have nurses. And we can visit when we're free. Sarah froze. For a moment, she thought she had misheard. But when she saw her daughters-in-law nodding in agreement, she realized the truth. The children for whom she had killed her own desires, the children for whom she had worked night and day, were now deciding to give her away like an old piece of furniture. Her chest tightened, and tears blurred her sight. She pressed Ahmed's photograph to her heart, whispering, "Did you hear them, Ahmed? The same boys we dreamed for, they no longer have space for me." The next morning, Ayan approached her gently, avoiding her eyes. "Ami, we've been thinking. You're not well, and maybe it's better if you stay in a care home for a while. Just until you feel better." Sarah looked at him silently. Her lips curved into a faint smile, but her eyes glistened. She didn't argue, didn't plead. She only said softly, "Of course, Beta. If that's what makes your life easier." In that moment, she wasn't a mother begging for love, she was still a mother protecting her sons from guilt. The day of departure came. Sarah folded her simple clothes into a small bag, her hands trembling. She paused before leaving her room, touching the walls one last time, the corners where Ahmed once laughed, the window where her sons had played cricket. Each step felt like tearing a piece of her soul away. When they reached the old age home, the matron welcomed her kindly. But Sarah's eyes never left her sons. She wanted them to look back, to change their minds, to say, "No, Ami, come home with us." But they didn't. Ayan kissed her forehead quickly, Rayyan hugged her half-heartedly. "Take care, Ami. We'll visit soon." And then they left. Sarah stood in the doorway of her new home, watching the car drive away. Her tears finally broke free, rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. Under her breath, she whispered, "I never abandoned you, not for a single moment. Why was it so easy for you to abandon me?" Inside, the walls smelled of medicine, the halls echoed with the coughs and sighs of other forgotten souls. Sarah realized she was now one of them. The old age home smelled of medicines, faint disinfectant, and loneliness. Sarah's new room was small, just a bed by the window, a wooden chair, and a cupboard that barely held her few clothes. The walls were dull and lifeless, nothing like the vibrant home she once built with Ahmed. Every morning, nurses came to hand out medicines. Some spoke kindly, others treated the residents like burdens. Sarah always smiled, no matter how she was treated. She didn't want to be seen as difficult. But deep inside, her heart bled. Around her were other abandoned souls, an old man who muttered his daughter's name in his sleep, a frail woman who spent hours staring at the door, waiting for visitors who never came, and a grandmother who clutched a broken toy, whispering stories to invisible grandchildren. Sarah listened to them, her tears hidden behind her quiet smiles. "We are all the same," she thought. "Once we gave everything, and now, we are forgotten." Days turned into weeks. Ayan and Rayyan never came. Not a call, not a letter. Sometimes, Sarah asked the caretaker, "Maybe my sons are busy? They'll come soon, won't they?" The caretaker only nodded softly, unable to meet her eyes. Every night, Sarah would sit by the window, staring at the stars. She remembered the nights she had stayed awake sewing clothes, the nights she had skipped meals, the nights she had cried quietly so her children wouldn't hear. And now, when she needed them most, silence was her only companion. One afternoon, as she watched the other residents receiving visitors, her heart ached. Children arrived with flowers, grandchildren with laughter. Sarah stood by the doorway, waiting, her dupatta neatly pressed, her eyes filled with hope. But no one came for her. She returned to her room slowly, her hands trembling. She sat on her bed and whispered, "Ahmed, I wish you were here. At least, I wouldn't be so alone." Her tears fell onto the same photograph she had carried with her. The one of Ahmed smiling, the one that had been her strength all these years. Now, it was all she had left. That night, Sarah closed her eyes, her heart heavy with longing. The old age home echoed with coughs, whispers, and footsteps, but none of them belonged to her children. She was alive. But already, she was forgotten. The winter air inside the old age home was colder than usual. Sarah's health had begun to fail rapidly. Her once steady hands now trembled even while lifting a glass of water. The nurses tried to help her, but she often refused, whispering, "I'm fine. I've been through worse." Yet her weak body betrayed her strength. At night, her cough grew harsher. Sometimes, she would wake up gasping for breath, clutching Ahmed's photograph tightly against her chest. She whispered his name like a prayer, her tears soaking the old picture. "Ahmed. I'm tired. I carried everything for so long, but now, I want to rest. I just want to see you again." One afternoon, while lying in bed, she overheard another woman's family visiting. Laughter, children's voices, and the smell of food filled the hallway. Sarah's lips curved into a faint smile as she closed her eyes, imagining for a moment that it was Ayaan and Rayyan, that they had finally come to see her. She pictured them entering with flowers, hugging her tightly, telling her, "Ammi, we missed you." But when she opened her eyes, the hallway was empty. Only silence greeted her. The reality was harder than her imagination. Her body grew weaker with each passing day. Nurses noticed how she stared endlessly at the door, as if waiting. One kind nurse whispered to her, "Do you want me to call your sons?" Sarah smiled faintly, shaking her head. "No, Beta. They must be busy. Don't disturb them. A mother never disturbs her children." Her words broke the nurse's heart. That night, as rain fell softly against the window, Sarah lay in bed, her breath shallow, her face pale. She whispered one last prayer, her voice barely audible. "Ya Allah, protect my sons. Forgive them, and forgive me if I ever failed them. I only lived for them." Her eyes wandered to Ahmed's photograph on the bedside table. With a trembling hand, she pulled it close, pressing it to her heart. For the first time in years, her face looked peaceful. A single tear slid down her cheek as her lips formed his name. Ahmed. And then, silence. Sarah's journey had ended. The woman who had given everything, her youth, her health, her dreams, slipped away quietly, alone in a room where no one came to hold her hand. The next morning, the staff found her lifeless body still clutching the photograph. They covered her gently with a white sheet, their own eyes wet with tears. One of them whispered, "She left this world the way she lived, in sacrifice, in love, and in silence." The morning was quiet in the old age home. A soft breeze carried the scent of wet earth as the staff prepared Sarah's body. They washed her with gentle hands, wrapping her in a clean white kafan. Her face, even in death, looked peaceful, as though she had finally found the rest she had been denied in life. The caretaker, wiping his eyes, whispered, "She always spoke about her sons. She kept saying they would come. But they never did." Calls were made to Ayaan and Rayyan. The staff dialed every number they had given. One phone rang endlessly. The other was answered by a recorded voice. "The number you are trying to reach is unavailable." Finally, after hours, a relative answered and said casually, "Oh, the boys are out of the country, enjoying holidays with their families." The caretaker's heart sank. "And their mother?" he asked bitterly, staring at Sarah's still form. But there was no reply. The funeral was small. A few staff members, some of the elderly residents, and the imam gathered around the simple wooden coffin. Rain drizzled gently as the call to prayer echoed through the graveyard. Allahu Akbar. The coffin was lowered into the ground, not by the hands of her children, but by strangers who had known her only for a short while. Strangers who mourned her more than the ones she had given her life for. As soil covered the grave, the caretaker's voice broke. "Ya Allah, forgive her. She was a mother who gave everything. She deserved love, not loneliness. The Imam raised his hands in dua, his voice trembling. And in that moment, even the sky seemed to cry with them. Far away, in another country, Ayan and Rayyan were laughing, taking pictures on a beach, their children playing in the sand. They had no idea, or perhaps no care, that their mother was being laid to rest in silence. Back at the grave, the staff stood quietly, their hearts heavy. "Her sons will regret this one day," one of them said. "But by then, it will be too late." The camera lingers on Sarah's freshly covered grave, the soil still wet, a single flower resting on top. Her name etched on the stone, Sarah Ahmed, a mother who gave everything. And then, silence. Weeks later, the airport was crowded as Ayan and Rayyan returned with their families. Their children laughed, dragging colorful suitcases, their wives discussed shopping, and the brothers smiled, carrying gifts. Life seemed perfect. As they stepped outside, their phones buzzed with multiple missed calls and messages. At first, they ignored them, brushing it off as work. But when Ayan finally listened to a voicemail from the old age home, his face turned pale. "Your mother, she passed away. We tried to reach you, but no one came. She has been buried." The word struck like a knife. Ayan stopped in his tracks. Rayyan noticed his brother's silence and grabbed his arm. "What happened?" Ayan's lips trembled as he whispered, "Ami, she's gone." The suitcases slipped from their hands. Their children kept playing, unaware of the storm that had shattered their fathers. Their wives stood frozen, guilt flickering across their faces. At home, the walls felt colder than ever. The chair where Sarah once sat was empty. Her Quran still rested on the side table, her dupatta neatly folded on the bed. But the warmth she carried was gone forever. That night, both brothers sat in her room, holding her photograph. Tears streamed down their faces. "Why didn't we go to her?" Rayyan whispered, his voice breaking. Ayan choked, "She kept waiting." "I know she did. And we weren't there." They both remembered the meals she cooked that they never came home to eat, the times she asked them to visit but they were too busy, the moments she looked at them with love while they looked away. Every memory now became a wound, each sharper than the last. The next day, they went to the graveyard. The soil was no longer fresh, but the flowers left by the staff were still there, wilted but loyal. The brothers knelt beside the grave, their hands trembling as they touched the cold earth. "Ami, forgive us," Ayan cried, his voice breaking in sobs. Rayyan buried his face in his hands. "We abandoned you when you needed us the most. We had everything because of you, and we gave you nothing in return." Their tears soaked the soil, but the grave remained silent. The woman who once comforted them with her embrace could no longer wipe their tears. For the first time in their lives, they understood true loneliness, the same loneliness their mother had carried for years. But now, regret was the only thing left for them. The camera lingers on their broken faces as the Imam's words from her janazah echo faintly in the background. She gave everything, and received nothing but silence. Days turned into weeks after Sarah's burial, but her absence followed Ayan and Rayyan like a shadow. Their homes, once filled with laughter, now carried an invisible weight. Every corner seemed to whisper her name, every silence reminded them of her voice. Ayan often woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat. In his dreams, he saw his mother sitting by the window of the old age home, waiting, her eyes searching for him. He would run toward her, but before he could reach, she would vanish into smoke, leaving him screaming, "Ami." His wife tried to calm him, but his tears betrayed his strength. Rayyan grew restless at work. Meetings blurred, papers remained unsigned. Colleagues whispered about his distraction, but he didn't care. At home, his children ran to him with toys, but every time he looked at their innocent faces, he remembered his own mother's face, tired, aged, still smiling for him even when he had abandoned her. Their guilt seeped into their families. Arguments became common. Ayan's wife, once proud of her social outings, now accused him of being moody and joyless. Rayyan's wife complained that he was emotionally distant. Neither of them understood the storm raging inside the brothers. One evening, Ayaan sat alone in his mother's old room. He picked up her Quran, the pages worn with her fingerprints, still carrying the faint scent of her hands. His tears fell onto the pages as he whispered, "Ami, you taught us everything, except how to live without you." Rayyan joined him, carrying the photograph of their mother. Both brothers sat in silence, the photograph between them, their heads bowed like children once again. At the dinner table, their children asked innocently, "Papa, why don't we ever visit Dottie?" The question struck like lightning. Ayaan's fork slipped from his hand. Rayyan excused himself, rushing to the bathroom to hide his tears. Their children, too young to understand, had unknowingly reminded them of their biggest failure. The graveyard became their only refuge. They visited often, bringing flowers, sitting beside the mound of earth as if waiting for her to respond. Sometimes, Ayaan read Quran for her, his voice trembling. Sometimes, Rayyan simply spoke to the grave, confessing his guilt, begging for forgiveness that would never come. "Ami, we thought we had time," Ayaan whispered one evening, his hand pressed against the cold soil. "But life stole you before we even realized what we were doing." The grave remained silent. The wind rustled the trees, carrying away their tears. Sarah had left the world, but her absence was louder than her presence had ever been. Her sons, once officers with power and respect, now carried a weight heavier than any burden, the weight of neglect, the price of forgetting a mother's love. Nights had become the hardest. Ayaan would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind replaying scenes he had buried deep inside. He saw his mother's wrinkled hands stitching clothes late into the night, the way she smiled when she gave him new shoes, the way her eyes lit up when he succeeded. And then, he saw her face in the old age home, waiting for a son who never came. Sometimes, he swore he could hear her voice calling softly, "Ayaan, beta." He would jolt awake, sweat dripping down his forehead, only to find the room empty. Rayyan was no different. At the office, he often saw his mother's reflection in the glass doors, a frail woman in a white dupatta, standing silently, staring at him. When he turned, no one was there. In meetings, he sometimes heard her cough, faint but familiar, echoing in his ears until he couldn't focus. One night, Rayyan's wife found him sitting on the floor of their room, his head buried in his hands, whispering, "Ami, forgive me. Please forgive me." His wife touched his shoulder gently, but he shrugged her hand away. "You'll never understand," he muttered, his voice breaking. "You never saw the look in her eyes when we left her there." At Ayaan's home, his children once asked, "Papa, why do you cry when you look at Dottie's photo?" He couldn't answer. He simply hugged them tightly, sobbing silently into their hair, thinking of how his own mother had longed for such hugs in her last days. The graveyard became their prison. Every weekend, they visited her grave, but instead of peace, they found torment. Ayaan sat beside the mound of earth, speaking as if she were alive. "Ami, I brought flowers. Do you see them? Do you hear me? Please, just one sign that you forgive me." Rayyan knelt beside him, trembling. "Sometimes I feel she's still angry. Sometimes I feel her silence is her punishment." The imam who passed by overheard them and said softly, "A mother never stays angry at her children. But tell me, what use is regret when it comes after her death? Love must be shown in life, not after." The brothers wept harder, his words cutting deeper than any sword. At night, both men were haunted by the same dream. Their mother, sitting in her room, staring at the door, waiting. Her lips whispering prayers, her eyes filled with hope. And then, darkness. They woke up screaming, only to realize the dream was not a dream at all, it was a memory, a truth they could never escape. Sarah was gone. But her absence had become the loudest presence in their lives. Time kept moving, but the wound in Ayaan and Rayyan's hearts never healed. They carried their guilt like chains, heavy and unbreakable. Ayaan sat at the dining table one evening, waiting for his children. He had cooked their favorite meal himself, biryani, just the way his mother used to make. But when his son came home, he barely glanced at the food. "Sorry, Papa. I'm going out with friends. I'll eat later." And just like that, he left. Ayan's eyes followed him, his heart sinking. He remembered how his mother used to wait for him at the table, her food growing cold as he chose friends over her. Now, life was replaying the same scene, only this time, he was in her place. At Rayyan's home, the story was no different. His daughter scrolled on her phone while he tried to talk. "Beta, how was your school today?" he asked softly. She didn't even look up. "Good. That's it? Won't you tell me more?" he pressed. "Papa, please. I'm tired. Can we talk later?" she said, slipping away into her room. The silence she left behind was deafening. Rayyan's chest tightened as he remembered all the times his own mother had asked, "Beta, how was your day?" and how he had brushed her off, too busy to talk. One night, both brothers met at Sarah's grave. They sat in the stillness of the cemetery, the moon casting shadows across the tombstones. "It's happening again," Ayan whispered. "Our own children, they're drifting away from us." Rayyan nodded, his eyes wet. "This is our punishment, Ayan. The way we abandoned Ami, life is showing us the same pain." Ayan clenched his fists, trembling. "But it hurts so much. I finally understand what she must have felt, every single day." The camera shifts to their homes. Empty dining tables. Children laughing with friends, ignoring their fathers. Wives too caught up in their own worlds to notice. The cycle had begun again. The brothers returned home that night, broken. They both sat quietly in their mother's room, staring at her photograph. Her eyes seemed to pierce through them, almost as if saying, "Now you know." The episode ends with the haunting image of Ayan and Rayyan sitting side by side in the dark, their mother's picture between them, tears streaming silently, a legacy of neglect continuing into the next generation. The night was darker than usual. Ayan and Rayyan sat in their mother's old room, the Quran still lying where she had left it. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. Ayan finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Rayyan. I can't live like this anymore. Every day I wake up and feel her eyes on me. Every meal reminds me of her. Every prayer reminds me of her. But she isn't here." Rayyan's eyes welled with tears. "I feel the same. It's like she's still waiting for us somewhere, but we'll never reach her again." The next day, they both went to the graveyard together. They brought roses, their hands shaking as they placed them gently on the soil. Rayyan broke down, kneeling. "Ami, if only we had one more chance. I swear we'd never leave you alone. We'd sit with you, laugh with you, hold your hand. We'd never choose the world over you." Ayan's voice cracked. "We don't deserve forgiveness. But please, wherever you are, know that we finally understand your pain." The imam of the mosque, who had seen them visiting for weeks, approached quietly. He placed a hand on their shoulders. "Sons, Allah is merciful. A mother may have left this world, but if you truly want redemption, serve others the way you should have served her. Feed the poor. Care for the abandoned. Become fathers your children will not forget." The words struck them like lightning. For the first time, their tears carried not just grief, but a purpose. Months passed, and Ayan and Rayyan began a new chapter. They donated much of their wealth to an old age home. They visited lonely mothers, sat with them, listened to their stories, and treated them as if they were their own. Every smile they brought to those forgotten faces felt like a prayer for their own mother's soul. Slowly, their homes also changed. Their children began noticing the shift, their fathers more present, more humble, more loving. One evening, Ayan's daughter hugged him and whispered, "Papa, I think Dottie would be proud of you." Ayan closed his eyes, tears streaming, as if those words were Sarah's voice itself. The story closes with the two brothers once again at Sarah's grave. The air is peaceful, the sun setting in the distance. Rayanne whispers, "Amy, we couldn't be the sons you deserved in your life, but we promised to be the men you would have been proud of in your death." The camera pans up to the sky, the clouds parting slightly, a beam of sunlight falling gently on her grave, as if her soul had finally forgiven them.